guys, it's a different day of the week, but I mean, light them if you got them, because the PD Skillz show is now bringing a higher level of entertainment to your Thursdays. And today we're taking a break from, the monotonous interview a wrestler, and we're going to be marks today and talk wrestling video games. And who better to join me than me top amigo? As much as I love to give him a hard fucking time, you may remember him from a wrestling ring near you as a promoter, a referee, or, just a delinquent unruly having a good time. The one and only Chris Holler. Welcome to the show.
How's it going? Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's good. Just been watching a little bit of Dynamite this week. Today's Dynamite, because episode airs Thursday, so no secret. We're watching it the night before.
No spoilers.
Yeah, no spoilers. Well, I mean, by the time this airs, it's gone through. So I mean, it's on a commercial right now, though, so I have no spoilers in motion to really hand out there. So yeah, today I wanted to talk about the video gaming aspect, but hit them with a little bit of history first. I'll give the floor to you, Holler. Tell them a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I've been a fan of wrestling since I was like 10, and to be honest, it was the WWF Raw wrestling video game for the Genesis that got me even interested in pro wrestling. Yeah. Funny enough, not necessarily the gameplay, but just seeing the wrestlers' profiles on the Wrestler Select and hearing their theme songs and everything made me interested in learning more about them. So actually got me watching the show more. So this topic is near and dear to me because not only am I a hardcore wrestling game fan, as you can see, but really it's responsible for me being a fan, and a few years later getting involved in the business in 2002, and from there becoming a referee for Border City Wrestling, UWA Hardcore, tons of other promotions, and had a great time with that. Tried my hand at promoting with Sin City Wrestling here in Windsor, Ontario, which was great experience, a lot of fun, and just kept reffing on and off for the next decade or so. And here I am now, just waiting for the next wrestling game like everyone else.
Yeah, and also much like everybody else, I mean, when shit hit the ceiling, I mean, wrestling is fucking back, but when shit hit the ceiling, you obviously missed out on a few opportunities there too.
Yeah, for me, I've been away for a few years raising family and, doing adult shoot things, and haven't really been in the ring too much, just once every couple of years or so, a show or two. But last year I had a tryout accepted for a company that's no longer in business, that was purchased by a much larger company, and basically lost my opportunity for that to work with some guys like Tommaso Ciampa and some other guys from NXT. For me, to be honest, one of the biggest things that I was sad to miss out on was an opportunity to referee or at least work a show with Colby Carino, who is the son of one of my favorite wrestlers of all time, Steven Carino. Who also have a match coming up against each other soon. So
yes, very soon. That's who do you think? Do you think Steve's gonna put his son over, or is Papa Bear gonna put Baby Boy in his place?
I think that for this, I think it's time for Colby to make that next step. He kind of lost that opportunity with the company that closed down. Yeah. And so right now, he's got to show himself off to promotions right now, and maybe we'll see him someday soon in a place like Impact, AEW, who knows.
It'd be good. And I mean, everybody loves second generation, third generation superstars, so I mean, especially one with someone like Steve Carino, like great wrestler, I think was majorly underappreciated. At the time, probably safe to say, probably one of the first downloaded characters you'd get every game.
For me, yeah, like at
Yeah.
the time, it was his in-ring style matched what I like to see at the time. And to be honest, he felt and looked like somebody that it wasn't a big muscular guy or anything. He wasn't totally out of shape, but he had an average body. And at the time, that made me think that, hey, maybe I might be able to do it. And then after a few months of pro wrestling training, I decided to just put on the stripes instead. But yeah, it was Carino that really got me into wanting to do the wrestling part of it.
Mhm. Okay, so that's he's where it made you like stray from just the entertainment and go, there's a whole nother gear to this.
Yeah, there are guys that at the time looked like me that could at the time be an ECW World Heavyweight Champion.
Yeah.
And even from when he debuted, he didn't really look like somebody that would achieve that level of success. But to his credit, like, yes, they were depleted roster, but he stepped up, he took the ball,
Yeah.
he changed up his look, and
And like you said, being able to be champion. And what's funny with the ECW championship, and I should probably preface this with the ECW championship and the Intercontinental Championship are probably my two favorite titles of all time. But I always liked the wrestlers that carried those titles more and felt that they were titles almost anybody could carry. And that's why I liked them so much.
Yeah.
Is like back then you wouldn't see a guy like you wouldn't have seen back in the day a guy Daniel Bryan size win a WWE championship, but hell yeah on an Intercontinental Championship, and hell yeah for an ECW championship.
Yes.
And those were like, because I mean, for me, the ECW title was a title anybody could end up getting without discrimination, just like the Intercontinental Championship.
That's right. Yeah. And with Carino, just a segue, one of the underrated games that most people do not like that I do love, the ECW games from Acclaim.
Yes.
Again, everyone hated them, and no, they're not great, but they were such a major part, especially for the wrestler creation. And again, getting that ECW, that was my first time to actually be able to play Steve Carino in a wrestling video game. And it's a shame that for ECW guys, that's really the only game where we got to play as most of them, even in later years.
Yeah.
So it's fun to revisit just for that. Again, entrances, when they used to, on Attitude and all those, when they would do the entrances and then they would say their lines on each corner, they would zoom in on each wrestler,
okay,
say their cheesy line and everything. And oh, that stuff is great.
All right. Well, we'll actually, you know what? We'll get into some of those games right now. I actually pulled a couple lists. One was a little bit old. One was a little bit newer, but not as detailed. And some of it kind of surprised me. But we'll kind of go with the current games first. Right now, I mean, we're in a spot where obviously around SummerSlam weekend, they announced that we're not getting WWE 2K22 until next year now, until March. Obviously, easy to assume based on our previous conversations, you were just as pissed about it as I was.
Oh yeah, like I understand the reasons, so we can explain the reasons for anyone that doesn't know. Basically, long story short, an argument between the direction of the game with both the developer and the WWE, and basically WWE wanting the game out at their normal time of the fall, October.
Yeah.
But because they felt like it's not enough time for them to be able to release what they envisioned of the game.
Yeah.
They wanted at least till like March. But that's also causing problems with WWE because they might want to abandon this relationship that they've had for so long with 2K.
Yeah. And if that's gotten to the point where like we know that that's the case, then obviously 2K's got to know that's the case. And do you feel they're going to put their best foot forward still and maintain professionalism? Because we've seen them give us shitty games before. Do you think they'll still try to redeem themselves knowing the relationship's going in a bad way?
Well, I think that's why. If they just wanted the money and everything, they just pushed the game out when they wanted.
They could have said yes, sir, and put it out in November.
Exactly. The fact that they want to delay it shows that, yeah, they do want to make up for the travesty that 2K20 was. And then also with that, though, there's also the possibility, we've seen this before happen with Acclaim and even another developer, I think a long time ago, where the license got canceled during development and then they became another game. One of the famous ones being WCW Mayhem 2, which was slated to come out, and then WCW folded. So in this case, it was a little bit different, but since they didn't have a license anymore, they turned into Def Jam Vendetta, and we got a totally different game.
That's what Def Jam Vendetta came from.
That's right, yeah.
See, and this is why you're here. This is why you're the chosen one for this episode.
It was one of the games that obviously got close to that No Mercy formula.
Def Jam Vendetta, absolutely. I fucking love that game. I had no idea it was from the bones of a WCW 2B.
Right. So they made that into Def Jam Vendetta, and I that happened also. Maybe I was wrong about the developer, that being Acclaim. I think Acclaim was the one where once they lost the license, whatever game they were working on became then the Legends of Wrestling series. So just saying that the same thing could potentially happen here, where if WWE gets fed up and just says, screw it, and cancels the game, we could potentially see this being remolded into, let's say, an indie game, like with indie wrestlers or something similar to Legends of Wrestling. New Japan.
Well, if they decide to make it a fucking indie game, they just have to delete the half of the roster they weren't going to delete.
That's right. Yeah.
Like, in a lot of dope talent, like, you could take the talent they're released and make a whole nother game.
Oh yeah.
All released wrestling.
Yeah, they definitely could. If you look at the roster there of the released people in the last year, you could fill up a video game. You could book like an entire promotion with that roster, which is really away from video games for a moment, but really sets a bright future for at least the next few years for the independent wrestling scene, as you see so many of these guys become available to work in other places.
Yeah.
Not just because they're not with the WWE, but because AEW lets them work these other shows and promotions. So that could also mean some wrestling video game tie-ins and crossovers. What about opening the forbidden door of wrestling video games?
That would require a lot of hands on deck, and I think unfortunately a lot of hands in the wallet.
It would to license all those different guys, and
it'd have to be a labor of love. I don't think it would be a labor of profit.
But Fire Pro got that started with, speaking of which, in the background here, Fire Pro World, which is a few years old now, but I'll still play all the time because there's no other real wrestling game to play. But anyway, with Fire Pro Wrestling, I forget now what I was going to say about Fire Pro Wrestling, but I got distracted by actually what was happening in the background as I was trying to pay attention to who that was.
I find with Fire Pro Wrestling, where like I say with like I was saying, like a Forbidden Door game, where I say it wouldn't be a labor of profit, it'd be a labor of love. Fire Pro, I found a way to make a labor of profit and then let the fans, the players, make it a labor of love and turn it into what it really is. It's like they just kind of threw out, here's a sweet platform, make it your own.
And that's also what made 2K20 salvageable, really, was the creation suite. Kind of the same thing, just how good that was. And Fire Pro has always been huge on their creations. So that is a big thing. But even what I was going to say before actually was New Japan Pro Wrestling with their deal. There's something like that could have been good, where the developer licenses those wrestlers
for packs.
Yeah, and then you could get, do the same deal with ROH and everything, and with another one. And there's always the issue of like one company overshadowing another or highlighting over another. But yeah, if you make it just something where everybody just wants, to be a part of it, they might be able to work that out. And at least maybe between AEW and Impact, that would be something interesting to see if they could do that.
Well, let's fantasy book this one. let's say 2K22 somehow doesn't fucking happen. WWE actually does a DLC for, like, an official DLC for Fire Pro. What 5 guys are you putting in that first pack? That
For
you
Fire
actually
Pro?
think? Yeah, for Fire Pro. For
5
an
guys of
official
current,
release.
an
Yep,
official
5
release.
WWE current.
5 current WWE guys. I
Don't
have
be
to
a mark.
say,
You're trying to make money.
well, then I would have to be a mark. I would have to say, though, Seth Rollins.
Yeah.
Obviously, he's probably one of the most subscribed people on there. Selfishly, Kevin Owens,
Okay.
because I'm always him in the game. I always end up playing as him when I actually play. I always end up playing a lot as AJ Styles.
That's one I figured had to be in it.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, as much as I love Kevin Owens, I didn't have him. I wouldn't have had him down for the 5 for the DLC as much as I love him. But
well, now that he's back too, I can officially say Brock Lesnar, because it's
yeah,
always satisfying in any wrestling game to destroy people as Brock Lesnar. And then for 5th, that's a tough one. I guess I think for the money part, I guess I would have to say Roman Reigns.
Yeah.
And I guess I could accept him as a DLC to head off, be the head of that DLC table, if you will.
Now, in making your list, you were going active wrestlers. Is that safe to say?
Yeah, you said WWE. Just looking at
I
current WWE guys.
I was sure, like, with
That's why I
everything
slipped
going
in
on and
Brock.
everything rumored, I'm like, is he just voiding the Cenas and the Rocks, or is he just considering active?
I've never liked playing it. This is not hate on John Cena. In any game, I've never really liked playing as him. His move list is just dull to me, and 5 knuckle shuffle, I don't like doing it.
Hey man, it's just playing as John Cena is as close to getting No Mercy controls back as you could ever wish for.
That's
Nice and
right.
simple.
But it's too hard to play a game when you can't see your character.
That's true too. All right, so I actually, something we've kind of talked about before that made me kind of realize it wasn't just us thinking of it. Do you remember, when 2K20 kind of flopped and we started noticing WWE Supercard, a not too often mentioned game, but like at least with us now, but all the advertisements were focused on Supercard instead of the 2K20 game that everybody was hating on. So I actually found a list and I wanted to kind of look at it's the 10 best wrestling games, and I guess this is an article from this year, and it's released by Metacritic. So I'm seeing, I haven't actually went through the list, but I'm seeing Supercard actually in here. Where are you thinking people that are like, because I mean, obviously we know lots of games, but if it's someone who's just been gaming in the last 10 years, where do you think Supercard's going to sit in that, like, with the lack of WWE games recently?
I think it's hard to rate or include mobile games in any game ranking. Like, I feel like they always need their own separate ranking.
Yeah,
but
that's why I found it weird. I just saw Sasha Banks card and I was like, wait, somebody's got Supercard on their list? Which, like, I mean, I've probably put a lot of hours into that game.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Like,
so,
I have to admit that it has a large user base. The reason why they pushed that so much was not just because 2K20 was doing so bad, but because Supercard was doing so good. And then they've added a lot of content. They put a lot of work into what is pretty a basic and repetitive, tedious game, but made people come back for it. So I guess they did something right with it. Yeah. I can't picture a world where I would place it in any top list, but for some, like you said, like some people are really into it. I can get that, but it's hard for me to accept that as a wrestling game, because then I'm going to start to include wrestling simulators if that's the case.
Yeah,
like,
that's fair.
TNM7, TW, like those I played probably maybe more than some actual wrestling games, but it's hard to rank them together.
So taking a look at this one, they've got Day of Reckoning at number 10. I didn't play a lot. Did you play many of the Nintendo ones like after 64?
One of the main reasons of me getting a GameCube was for the rumored separate Nintendo specific WWE game. At the time, it was a wonderful time when we had 3 different developers, 3 different systems producing video games at the same time, with Day of Reckoning on the GameCube, Raw on the Xbox, and the SmackDown series on PS2 and PS1. So that game specifically, not only did it look really good for a GameCube game, but I don't know if you remember, if other people remember, and now I can't even think it might be in the second one, but I'm pretty sure it was in the first one, was the stages in your career where you had to fight like construction workers. And
I do recall seeing
men.
screenshots of that. I didn't play those modes.
Yeah, you would going through an environment and almost like a beat 'em up, but doing wrestling moves to all these guys or throwing them off of a scaffold and such. And it was such an interesting thing to add into the career mode that, again, made it stand out from the other 2 and made it fun in its own right. 2 definitely was a step up in the series. Then it went downhill with the Wrestlemania games that they released after that.
Okay. Now, surprisingly, like I said, I didn't play any of the Nintendo ones. And like the WrestleMania X8 was for them, right?
Yeah.
That's I think the only one I really played more than once at least.
And that one was more similar to No Mercy with the controls for sure.
Yeah, and so unsurprisingly on their list next, they're littered with SmackDown versus Raws / SmackDown games, with the first SmackDown versus Raw is number 9. That's a decent spot.
Was that 2006 or the 2005?
This would be. Does it say? You know what? It doesn't say which.
I think it's 2005 then, because I don't know if they numbered it for the first one.
Yeah, yeah, because then I see number 8. They've got SmackDown versus Raw 2010, and then which also had handhelds. 2007 coming in at 7, and then they switched back to OG SmackDown Shut Your Mouth for number 6.
Well, before that, with the SmackDown versus Raws, not only was it cool in terms of that's really when we start to get a lot more legends on the rosters, and to me, some of the best rosters in the wrestling video games. And those also included a lot of modes and features that really stand out and that we wish we had back today. One of the most notable ones, of course, being the GM mode, which I believe was 2006, but maybe it might have been that one too.
That's 2006. Let's take a look.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, it's 2006. The mode is so below. Yeah, it's all about that, the GM mode.
It is totally. And
yeah, the addition of GM, it's saying that's why that one was so praised. So yeah, you would be right.
10.
And then they also had Buried Alive.
Anything in front of me, so I'm going off of memory. But I believe it was was that the Attitude one? Whichever the one first introduced the Attitude Era stories, and there were certain gameplay features in that one.
Yeah,
too,
that was good. I think that was at WWE. Weren't those 2K ones when they started doing that?
I can't recall.
I thought 2K is when they started.
Right, that might have been 2014.
Yeah, because that seems like something 2K would want to
10
do.
had something else big that I can't think of right now. Maybe the Undertaker, the surviving the Undertaker mode, whatever that was called.
Yeah.
But yeah, those were some fun modes that they added into some of the SmackDowns over the years. Even though the core gameplay didn't change too much, they did add a lot of different moments to relive like that were a lot of fun, the showcases, stuff like that. After that one with Shut Your Mouth, you said, like those first 3 were huge.
Mm-hmm.
But Shut Your Mouth was the one that was like, okay, the SmackDown series is better than the other 2.
Yeah, it's funny. You said you asked about the years with the SmackDown Raws, because right after SmackDown Shut Your Mouth, that's when 2006 with the GM mode was brought up. So
right. Well, Here Comes the Pain being the last one before that.
yeah, so for
That has to
you
be
saying
like,
Shut Your Mouth being the one that really made them take off, that
but
I
they
mean, and then followed
perfected.
up with GM mode. I guess that's GM mode was or must have been a real. It shows how big GM mode is and why it's weird they don't bring it back the way it was, because it's enough to put it, like, at least with this list, rank it higher than the game that really turned the tide for them.
It's just that you have to do it right. We have to go back to the mobile part. Sorry, I got something in my eye here. If we go back to the mobile part, AEW kind of blew it with the GM game that they put out.
I didn't like it. I just couldn't get into it, and I really wanted to. I thought the graphics were cool. I liked the art style, and I wanted to love it, but it's too guided.
It is, and typical of most app games, which is why I can't really
Which I
rank
mean
them
is
on
probably
there.
what
But
they didn't realize, like, we wanted to be a general manager that like called the shots. This is a little too real. Or you're a general manager, but you still don't call the shots. You're just, calling the shots as you're guided.
like, if I can't even open the forbidden door in that app to bring in some TNA guys or ROH guys or New Japan guys, then yeah, it's not very good. But yeah,
You're
that
trying
definitely
to
carried.
save credits.
Speaking of credits now, if we want to go that way, with the arcade games, did you get to play any of the arcade games, WrestleFest, Superstar?
Oh yeah, I played a bunch of, like, I've played a bunch of those, and I think some of those are going to be on that bigger list, and we'll definitely, because I want to touch on some of them, because some of them I didn't even know about, like off the top of my head. So that's there's a list of 30 I want to go through.
Okay.
I mean, we don't have to touch on all of them because some of them we'll already have spoken about.
Yeah,
But
we
yeah,
covered a few of
Supercard,
the 2K ones.
Supercard actually, that what drew me to this, came in at number 4 on their list. So these guys rank
Blasphemy.
Supercard.
4.
Yeah. With next being SmackDown Here Comes the Pain, which is actually in the top 3 spot for my top 3, so I can't hate on that. No Mercy at number 2, which is my number 1 spot. So number one they've got is SmackDown 2, Know Your Role.
That's surprising to me.
Hard disagree.
As much as I loved the gameplay and everything, I did feel like it was a little repetitive with the replays of your finishers all the time, stuff like that. It just didn't feel as fluid when you're playing it, I guess. So yeah, I don't.
I'm also wondering if they're only considering WWE games in this, because
are these based on rating?
It's 10. Yeah, this one is just WWE.
Okay. If it's just WWE and they're looking at it that way, like, I guess I can see how Supercard snuck in. That also explains why the WCW Super Nintendo game was not mentioned in the top 5.
Which WCW game?
Super Brawl for the Super Nintendo. And,
okay, so that is, I had a feeling that's what it was. Ironically enough, on that list of 30, this is a list published in like 2016, so some games will be left off it. But Super Brawl comes in at number 30.
Number 30 out of 30?
Yeah.
That's brutal.
So, and then, no, this is actually what drew me to the article, because Google gives you like the first little bit. They said Super Brawl is the Miz. Awesome what is it? Yeah, awesome digitized mini promos before the action starts. But once it steps into the squared circle, everything goes wrong, and you realize it's just a bit, well, rubbish.
I think that's a little harsh.
Yeah,
but, they tried to do something different
on the
with
game
it.
or on the Miz, because I mean both for me, but fuck.
Yeah. Sorry, I have an allergy issue right now, so we're gonna work through this here.
Is it that, or are you just that offended that they?
I am. You didn't say you didn't like Super Brawl? They rated Super Brawl number 30, but Super Card number 2? Are you, or number 4? Are you kidding me?
No, this is a different site now.
Okay.
Yeah, no. This
These
is
are
a different
getting
site. This is one that's old. That's why I said some games won't be on here, but I knew it would have a bunch of the arcade ones because I saw this Super Brawl one, and that, like I said, that Miz fucking thing drew me in. I was like, you got to be fucking kidding me.
So what was 29? Like, again, you don't have to go through each one, but I'm just
Yeah,
curious.
no,
What was better than
grace
Super
through them
Bowl?
if they're not notable. Wrestlemania, the arcade game.
As a wrestling game, no, I would rank it lower like that. Yeah, but it was a lot of fun. Like first you should
Yeah,
put
it was
in your
PS1,
house
Saturn,
first,
SNES, and Mega Drive.
and the arcade. There was a
Yeah,
arcade
obviously,
release
yeah.
for it. So that's the first arcade one on there. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was a Mortal Kombat style fighter.
Yeah.
And everyone had, super special powers. I think when Shawn Michaels kicked, he would kick out hearts, would shoot out when he did the super kick and everything.
Yeah, I've been playing a lot of the Super Nintendo ones recently. It's something I could just pull out, like, because I've got the emulator and play it, and I'm fucking terrible at all of them. But yeah, that is the one where Shawn Michaels kicks out the hearts and all that.
Yeah. So
I'm terrible at them. I need to like download gamer guides.
for the move list for that, yeah.
Yeah, it's
Those
not
are
like the old
back
days
when
where I
you
can just
needed
walk
to.
to the corner store and spend my life savings on it.
Right, exactly.
What was it? Power. What was the magazine?
Game Pro.
Was it? It wasn't Game
Pro
Power.
was one of them.
I thought one of them was Power something.
I don't know. But yeah, I would rank
like
your house as worse than WWE the arcade game, because at least the arcade game had more of a roster to pick through. Mm-hmm. Whereas in your house, except for my version, because I had the special Sega Saturn version, or maybe it was Sega CD, but whichever one had 2 extra wrestlers on it.
Ooh, a whole 2 slots. That was a big deal then.
It was. We got Vader and somebody else or something. I forget what it was, but in total that brought the roster up to 8 from 6. So
yeah. And then next they got a game that I think deserves its place, but we get to talk about our first non-WWE game, Showdown Legends of Wrestling 2004 for the PS2 and Xbox.
I'm surprised again by these ratings for some of these so low, and I know why people have some hatred for some of the Acclaim games, and maybe mine is just rose-colored glasses nostalgia that
and I think
I'm wearing there.
No, and it might be because the way they even listed, they're like the novelty entrant we all secretly want to see.
And that may have also been the one with Eddie Guerrero when he was during his hiatus from the WWE, and he was showing up in ROH and everything. He also appeared in one of those Legends games.
Yeah. I know they, at least from the list little write-up, had Hogan, Sting, Jake the Snake. I can see Warrior on the cover. I can see Andre. I can see Mach.
And keep in mind, at the time, we weren't getting
someone
all these
in
legends.
The air. It's too small for me to see, but someone's in the air that's not Mach. So obviously it's not any of the other guys.
Sabu was in those too.
Yeah.
Oh, Sabu, I wonder where Backyard Wrestling video game ranks
I don't know,
on
but
that
speaking
list.
of Sabu, let's actually, maybe I should make sure he's in the game. Oh yeah, he is. 27. They have ECW Hardcore Revolution.
There it is. There it is. I got my wisdom teeth taken out right when that game came out, and I just spent 3 days off of school and work at the time, just playing that and making creations nonstop.
Was it very attitude? Was it very like WWE Attitude vibe?
100% clone of Attitude, but with more simple combos, controls, and of course the ECW roster. Inferno like match, they called it something else, but when you throw the wrestler over the ring, it was covered by fire. They had dumpster matches.
Oh my god,
wire.
I'm a fucking clown. I actually read the now I'm reading it underneath while we're talking about it. It says Hardcore Revolution was a reskin version of Attitude. with
100%.
more jean shorts and fewer household names.
But it had Steve Carino,
It
the
did.
king of old school. That's what I'm trying to say.
Credible, Doring, Don Marie, Dreamer, Francine Guido, Victory, Jason, Jazz, Jerry Lynn, New Jack, Nova, Raven, Rhino, Roadkill.
Jerry Lynn with his badass heavy metal music for his entrance. I would use that as my theme song for my wrestler in it, with a right from the start. Always fantastic.
And then I
the
guess
entrances in those games.
I guess fair is fair. If one is a reskin of the other, then the original should come in slightly ahead, which it does. At number 26 is Attitude, which is a game I bought, one of like the first games, like wrestling games that I bought myself and played the shit out of, and it was so bad.
But the Creation Suite was
unheard of. The Creation Suite was cool. Yeah, very like, and it was cool to be able to play with the wrestlers in what seemed to be a lot of detail at the time. But once WrestleMania 2000 came out, even though I think Attitude had quote unquote better, more realistic graphics, it was kind of like Fire Pro Syndrome. You couldn't fuck with 2000 at the time.
I guess it was just hard for me to accept SmackDown, the first SmackDown, and the entrances from that, when they would just come out with the Titantron screen in the back for like 2 seconds and just walk into nothing. Yeah. Yet Attitude, even more than games you mentioned, had the full entrances. Not just the full entrances, but that you could create the full entrances with the lighting, the pyro, your animations going into the ring. And I would always watch the entrances because they were just so good. So as much as the core gameplay was rough, it had a fantastic roster at the time. All the creation stuff. Career mode was a lot of fun. I think that's underrated in some of those games.
Side note, have you ever plugged in your like old gaming system, loaded up an old game, loaded your custom character, and then laughed your ass off because they look absolutely ridiculous and everything they did is dog shit?
My creative wrestler was not based on me at all for the first few years.
Yeah.
I had a completely separate character that had blue hair, and he was a big muscular man, and his name was Semi. And I gave him that name. So did he
come to the ring just rocking a fucking half chub?
No, it was more based on, it was more of a ripoff of Diesel in Warzone. They had in the creation, the tights, the what do you wrestlers call it? The wrestling tights, at the top. Anyway,
Butcher.
On that, normally Diesels, Nash's would say Diesel on it, right?
Yeah.
But because they didn't have the rights for Diesel anymore, it was just Semi, like a semi truck.
Okay.
So I thought, hey, it has the writing on there. I'm just going to call him Semi, make him this big, strong guy, and he runs over people and all that. And yeah, I laugh about it now and everything, but it was also an original creation.
Semi, such good shit.
Yeah, he was the massive
Diesel. No, but he's Semi.
He was the massive pimping machine.
The massive pimping machine.
Yeah. There's a whole big lore in that.
Remember when pimping was such a fucking cool thing?
It was at the time.
And now, like, everybody's trying to crack down on pimps.
It is.
It's hard out there for a pimp.
It is. Pimping
now more than ever
ain't simple, as they say.
Yeah,
it's not simple.
Man.
Yeah. It's not super easy. It is a big inconvenience.
And speaking of the tits and ass industry, next up on the list, T25 TNA Impact. Okay. Yeah.
Impact now.
Keep in mind that's at 25, so there's still. I still think if you're in this part of their 30 list, they're shitting on you.
I dare anyone to play Impact today and not be amazed by the graphics.
Oh, I'm looking at the shot right now of Shark Boy punching Christian in the face, and that's the first thing I caught was those are pretty good fucking graphics.
They were amazing at the time, and they still hold up today. Some of the moves in the game, fantastic. It's just to play it, it was such a slog. It was not as fluid of what you would expect from TNA at the time in terms of X Division. Is even like they had the X Ultimate X match in it, which was awesome to have in a wrestling game. Like, of course, still the only game that has had that. And it did have its charm, but again, it was just so clunky and awkward to play. And overall, that's what I have to say about the game, is that it's just awkward to play. But it had a lot of good qualities, and it had a mobile release on the DS that was actually different from the actual console version. It had a lot of the same things, but it also had different modes and some different wrestlers, things like that. It was almost like a sequel to the Impact game.
All right,
and let's love the only Impact game to date. Show some love to that.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope down the road they come up with another one, even if it's not like a major multi-platform release. I'd like to see them come out with something.
That's right. I'm so tired of creating Scott D'Amore as the first wrestler in every one of my wrestling games.
Right.
I need him as playable day one.
And there's so many versions of him online. I just can't pick which one.
Well, you gotta go Coach D'Amore first.
Yeah, absolutely. The fucking best D'Amore. So then they got 2K14 at 24. I think that was the first 2K, wasn't it?
Now that is probably the one like you were talking about that had the attitude. That's what I thought.
Yeah, this one's the first one. It's got the
first 2K was with 12. 2K12 was the first of the series.
Yeah, was it?
Yeah, it was just known as WWE 12 at the time.
Okay. Yeah, I think you're right. This is the one with WrestleMania mode.
Okay, that one was WrestleMania mode. Yeah, I knew it had one of those well-liked ones, and the WrestleMania one was one of the better ones for sure. Especially being able to see the WrestleMania 3 entrances on with the ring going down the ramp, like with Andre and Hogan and stuff. That was a lot of fun to be able to pick those arenas and all that, all the different WrestleMania arenas. It was a really good game. I'm surprised that one is ranked so low. Maybe I'm joking a little bit about some of the other ones, but that one I feel should be legitimately higher.
I do agree, because I did like that one as well. But I mean, it wasn't a big jump from the previous necessarily. Then they got they got WWE Raw 2 for Xbox is 23.
One of the most fun things about Raw 2, and I don't know if you were part of this, but our group of friends would do a multiplayer season where
can't say I was part of that.
Yeah, so we would play at our friend's house, and everyone would have their own created wrestler, or maybe I think they were created, but you could have multiple careers going at the same time. And what you could do, other than just wrestling each other, was you could plan backstage attacks on them.
Okay.
And sometimes they would work out, sometimes they would fail. Like you would make like a box fall and almost hit Randy Orton or whoever. And you would make these stories yourself.
You're backstage doing Alexa Bliss shit.
Yeah, or actually attacking them too. It just gave you a way to further the story yourself, basically, and compete with each other, which was a lot of fun.
Now, next, this is something I'm almost gonna guarantee you're gonna be like, yeah, I played it, and I didn't even know it was a thing. Number 22. They say stupidity doesn't always mean something is bad. Ultimate Muscle Legends versus New Generation for GameCube.
I feel like I played the handheld version, but I did play through them through the story mode of it. I didn't really watch the show at all, but it reminded me more of like Saturday Night Slam Masters in terms of the style. Maybe not as much beat 'em up style as that was, but it felt like that type of game From what I can remember, there was like a gauge you would fill up to be able to execute your finisher, like a gauge that would fill at the side, like a meter, based on different things that you did.
Yeah.
But it's not one, I'm pretty sure I played the handheld, so it's not one I got to play with other people.
Okay.
So the only thing I played through was the story mode and only vague recollection. But a lot of people loved that game, like again, higher rated, because some people like some of the not so traditional wrestling games that are a little bit more arcadey.
Yeah.
And that's a big one for a lot of them. And I think a lot of people have the nostalgia love for that one too.
And then number 21, the king of fucking kings, Pro Wrestling 1987 NES.
Now that was the first wrestling game I played.
Yeah,
but
legitimately my first wrestling game.
yeah, but I didn't care about wrestling at all. I didn't like it at all.
No,
I didn't know about it.
I cared about wrestling, but like I didn't give like, and it was so cool to me that it was a wrestling game. I honestly swear half the time I probably pretended the guys were someone else.
Yeah, no, I didn't know anybody. So like when my friend had him, we would play and everything. Like it was fun to play like as a fighter game, but to me, it was just like, yeah, another fighter.
Playing pro wrestling for Nintendo for the first time, being my first pro wrestling game, and already being a pro wrestling fan was probably a lot similar to like my first indie experience, where I was like, I'm having a good time, but I don't know who the fuck any of these guys are.
And it's true, and you just kind of had to make up your own story with them. But it was a fun one to revisit a few years later. And I think that there's a depth to that game that a lot of people don't realize, like certain hidden moves. There's like a unlockable wrestler, which is, I think, just a reskin of Starman or something else. But there's more deeper things that I saw that is in the game that some people loved. And then of course you have the iconic "A Winner Is You" that has been memeified and kept alive to this day.
Yeah, and I mean, I've even now in indie matches used that shtick with the "I'm the winner" thing.
I'm the winner.
Yep. All right, and then some of the ones, like I said, we'd graze over that are going to be scattered amongst the list and can be disputed. 20 WWF SmackDown 2, Know Your Role. 19 Wrestling Spirit 2 for PC.
That was a game that was put out by the same people who made TW. That was more
yeah, I'm looking at the screenshots. I'm like, I'm surprised this is on here, but it's I knew you know exactly what it is.
It was more of a, I'm trying to compare it to another type of another game that existed before. There used to be a WWE PC multiplayer card game that was similar to that, where you would pick certain moves to do. So in that game, you create a wrestler, and then basically you're guiding them through their career. But during the matches, you would have in text form all the different moves that you could do, and you would select headlock, and then it would be whatever chance that you hit the headlock, and then this move, and try for a pin, whatever the case may be. And it would get harder as you face better people. But it was a deep role-playing game. And I think there was different versions. I'm not sure which one that referenced, and I want to say it's Grey Dog Software, but again, I'm just going off the top of my head here. But yeah, I might want to count those as games, because I know there was a couple of PC games that were like that too. They're just more strategy based.
Yeah,
it's different than a mobile game where it's not really a complete game. It's just a money grabber thing, where this was actually designed to, it's just like a text-based game that used to be popular. So I would count that in the list. I wouldn't have thought of it, but it's fair to count it.
They've got 18, the less popular WCW versus the World for PS1.
That was my first wrestling game on the PlayStation 1, and the first one that before I played like the other THQ games on the Nintendo, because I didn't have a Nintendo 64. I had a PlayStation 1. So I remember renting WCW versus the World. I think at the time I was a little disappointed in the wrestler selection. And the gameplay, although again, revisiting it, I do like it more now. At the time, it was just so different to me that it was really hard to get into it. And so that made me go more towards Warzone and the Acclaim games versus the THQ games, which of course I regretted later, but went back to with Revenge all the way through. No Mercy.
Yeah, absolutely. Then we got Saturday Night Slam Masters at 17.
So like I said,
I remember playing
game.
this one. Like it's like Street Fighter.
Right. And that's why it's ranking so high. It was popular for anybody that likes fighting games. They didn't have to be a wrestling fan.
Another dig. Actually, this is kind of a backhanded compliment. When styles shouldn't really mix, but end up turning out really well, you have a Goldberg situation. Fuck. And then we got 16 for Dreamcast and arcade, WWF Royal Rumble 2000. I never played Dreamcast. I hated it.
That was ranked that high up?
Yeah.
Okay. So another original arcade game that they ported to the Dreamcast.
They call this the Ziggler of the two dedicated Royal Rumble releases.
It had its charm. It was fun. Me and my friend Kevin, we played it a lot. But there was,
by the way, number 15 is Royal Rumble 93 from 7 years prior,
which was the start of the Acclaim love for me with Royal Rumble and Raw and all those. But yeah, Royal Rumble on the Dreamcast, it was the coolest Royal Rumble mode, and I loved Royal Rumbles. So at the time, you could have up to like 8 people in the ring on the Dreamcast, and that was huge, right?
Yeah.
But the problem is you only have about 12 people in the entire game. So what ended up happening in the Royal Rumbles was you would end up like recycling through some of the guys that were like eliminated. They would pull like a Mick Foley and come out more than once and all that. So that really hurt the game. But if you go back and play it, it really is the first SmackDown, like the first, like almost like a pilot for what SmackDown would be. Just released on Dreamcast, I think before, right around the same time. But again, it was on in the arcade first. But using that engine for the first time, showing what you could do with a Royal Rumble, just gave a lot of promise, but absolutely no replay value.
Yeah. And then down at number 14, in my opinion, the GOAT of arcade games, WWF WrestleFest 1991.
I was partial to Superstars, but WrestleFest is the big one. I think that most people remember.
Yeah, that's the one I remember just unloading the quarter rolls into.
Yeah, they had one at actually right by where you lived, at the corner store dry cleaner. There was, maybe it was Superstar, it was one or the other, but they had one there, and then also at Forest Glade Cinema here. And that was, it was way after the game came out, but still ate those quarters.
And then they've got SmackDown versus Raw 2007 at 13, followed by number 12, WWF Raw 1994 from Mega Drive SNES, which is one of the ones you were talking about first getting you hooked, right?
That's the one. And I am surprised it was that high, but okay, all the nostalgia aside, the other thing that for anyone that might be watching this that has not seen this video, I'm sure it's on YouTube, but Coliseum Video put out a WWF Raw strategy guide VHS that was hosted by Todd Pettingill. It's one of the best things ever to watch as you go through each wrestler in the game, they talk about themselves and they tell you secret moves. So what
Really?
you end up getting at one point is Paul Bearer and Undertaker explaining how to do his move. And Paul Bearer says, if you beat the Undertaker, he will make you rest in peace. Oh, yes. And do his whole spiel. And then Undertaker would say, to do the flippy floppy tombstone, whatever it's called, press A, B, down, right, A, rest in peace.
Yes, of course he did. Fuck
Just
yeah.
him like in his full, Raven era gear, with the hat and the trench coat, all dark, and just saying these button combinations to do his move with a silly name. Oh, it was so worth it. 1-2-3 Kid had a really good one on there too. Well, 1-2-3 Kid would for his special move jump from one post to another post to another post, and then do I believe a moonsault or a splash or something.
So they were all dope moves that you get out of watching it.
Yeah, like if you watch that, you learn how to do their secret special moves.
That's worth it then.
It was so much fun. And then that was another one where for I believe the Sega CD or Saturn, whatever other or maybe it was the Mega Drive, not the Mega Drive, 32X, the add-on for Raw added Savio Vega to it. I believe it was Savio Vega. It was someone lower Carter, we'll say. But it was, no, sorry, it wasn't Savio Vega. I forget who played him now, but Kang, what was it? I forget his name now. Quang. Was Quang Savio Vega?
Yeah. No, that was Conan.
There's one of them. Anyway, they were in like the extra game, and not a character that's worth it. But
yeah,
I thought that was cool that there's an extra wrestler in there. That was just another thing to mention about Raw. It was also the first wrestling game that had, or at least WWF related, that had a woman in the game, and we had Luna Vachon, and that was also a fun person to play as within the game too.
Yeah, no, it's and that's before it was an automatic DQ to slap a chick in the ring.
That's right.
And then we got number 11, one of my favorites. A lot of people fucking hate it. WWE All Stars 2011.
I was mixed on that. I wasn't huge on the game just because I do like the more sim related type.
Yeah, and I loved it because they were releasing both. You could get either or, and this was a year that I chose to not go with the main, like what they had to offer. I didn't go with the WWE 11 or SmackDown versus Raw versus whatever 11. I was like, fuck it, I'm gonna try this out because this looks like fun. The controls were a lot like No Mercy.
They were just, with your super moves and everything.
And
which I did like. It. Yeah.
And I thought this was a game that would bring them in more fanfare than it really did. And then they went to the well kind of on it again recently.
Yeah, with Battlegrounds, and it's another game that I think is another one that's fun to play, but doesn't really have much replayability for me.
And keep in mind, this is a list that was made from like 2016, so Battlegrounds will not be making an appearance on the list. Not a surprise where it doesn't belong.
So we're not going to see 2K19 anywhere on there.
No,
which I have to say, in retrospect, it should be considered within the top 5.
I think that's just because it was the last of a good thing.
But it was also the peak of that series in terms of...
It's like you don't want to disrespect their funeral. Actually, 2020 was their funeral.
It was. It was at least
their
the shot in the head.
That was 2019 was their swan song.
Yeah. And it still had some of its bugs, but to me, it was just the most complete version of that series.
Yeah. And then we got number 10, SmackDown versus Raw, the 2004. Followed by, and keep in mind, like I said, 2016, so we're not going to see Fire Pro that we have now. But at number 9, we got Fire Pro Wrestling Returns 2007 PS2.
Returns is still regarded as one of the best games of the franchise. As much as everyone admits, like, yeah, World,
that's when you like, because you had me.
Does it?
You're who introduced me to those games, and you didn't have me play that one a lot. So that's
Returns,
why I'm surprised it's so high.
Returns was the first US release on a console other than the Game Boy Advance of Fire Pro. Otherwise, you would need to import it from Japan pretty much any other time. So it was the first opportunity, not just for people to play it, but also for the creations. And at the time, it was very easy to use a Game Shark on your memory card to swap out different creation packs with that. And it's one of the first times where, you know, you had that community content being shared. And it's a game that lasted so long that it made a dead company resurrect to put out this thing, which I guess this tournament's over. The Big Show has won this tournament, folks, over the Undertaker.
Big news. Big Show finally
breaking news alert. But yeah, Returns was so loved within the community
Mark
that
Calloway
it made them come
EW
back.
Confirmed.
It made them come back and put out Fire Pro World, which just has been you know, the culmination of this series that's been going on since the 80s. And that I've been playing since Super Nintendo's Super Fire Pro Wrestling X Premium, and just having a blast with that. So yeah, Returns is something that I thought finally I could get other people into it, because it's not all in Japanese and you don't need a translator to print out pages of translation.
Or a friend
guides.
like you that just knew what everything meant.
Yeah, I could work my way around a Fire Pro G Japanese menu pretty well.
Yeah, that was always impressive.
Yeah, Fire Pro Returns, like, I guess this article might have been, I'm pretty sure Fire Pro World came out in 2017. So that might be the most recent Fire Pro for them, which again is still a fantastic game. It's just what the modding community has done for Fire Pro World. It's just added so much to the game and has really helped people kind of be tied over, at least until the next 2K or AEW game comes out.
Yeah. All right. And then next in our the top list, no strangers to a top 10 back-to-back. Number 8, it actually probably, yeah, I guess justifiably this point on the list for modern gamers maybe that don't have that nostalgia, but WCW versus NWO World Tour at number 8 and WCW NWO Revenge at number 7.
You could pretty much lump them together. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Revenge was just, it was improved, but it was the same game.
And I think that it
and
had
then
the roster, the memorable roster that
natural
really
progression, by the way, number 6 right under it, WrestleMania 2000.
And you know, I'm always the minority on the two THQ games from that era. Because I didn't have the N64, even though I still played them to death. I just didn't feel as rewarded from playing those games. I guess they were the most fun to play with other people, but I didn't really care to play through them or simulate matches or anything like that.
Yeah, fair enough. And then number 5, Day of Reckoning 2 for GameCube. Very surprised that's that high on the list.
That is surprising, but like I said at the beginning of this list, 2 did greatly improve on 1, mainly in terms of the graphics, but also in terms of the controls as well. And it had more of an actual story mode, I believe, although it's hard to remember the details of that.
And then another surprising one, number 4, Wrestle Kingdom 2, Pro Wrestling Sakai Taisen.
The Wrestle Kingdom series is also huge. So you had a few Japanese games that we didn't really get over here from All Japan and from New Japan. Wrestle Kingdom was was it PlayStation 1 originally?
Mhm.
Sorry, did you say 2 is on the list?
Yeah, 2.
2.
Wrestle Kingdom 2, Pro Wrestling Sakai.
So I was either PlayStation 1 or PlayStation 2, I can't remember, but it was like the main game for both New Japan and All Japan, and it was based on the Ukes engine. So it was a lot more similar to like the the Day of Reckoning series.
Okay.
So if which again was more similar to the No Mercy. So Ukes, of course, was involved in all these. And that game was one of the biggest imported games for sure on the 360. And it was I think they made 3 of them. So it was a love series. And yeah, just being able to play those New Japan, All Japan guys, Noah, all at the same time, that was huge. And for it being more official too, Fire Pro wasn't official. Even in Japan, it was all rip-offs of wrestlers until just the most recent one. But the Wrestle Kingdom releases, some regard as better than their counterparts. Just like in the No Mercy one that came out for I'm drawing a blank on the name, but Virtual Pro Wrestling.
Virtual Pro Wrestling.
Virtual Pro Wrestling 1 and 2, which was the New Japan, Old Japan version of No Mercy, like for the N64. So again, they released different one, Wrestle Kingdom for PS2, 360, and then the N64 up until the end had the Virtual Fighters, the Virtual Pro Wrestling series, which again is some regard as better than No Mercy, just because not only was it No Mercy, but it had a lot more moves and a lot more wrestlers.
So does this one surprise you though? I mean, Fire Pro back in it, Super Fire Pro Wrestling X Premium at number 3.
Again, that was what started it all for Fire Pro for me and many others, and that made the series so huge. Before I even really got into translations or ROMs or anything like that, Fire Pro was the very first one, and just being able to play as like anybody at the time and easily download on the computer all these different save files of ECW and all that. The first game that you would really sim to watch, not just play, which is still a huge part of the series. It was just so complete in that thousands of moves for an 8-bit or 16-bit game on Super Nintendo, hundreds of wrestlers that you could just rename to be their real counterparts or download other people's or create your own. It was just so deep. And the theme song, is still used in like OSW review and by a lot of other people. It's still loved. And like such iconic in the wrestling games history.
Yeah, absolutely. And then number 2 on the list, actually 2 and 1, I've already peeked ahead, are identical to my top 2. Number 2, Supercard? SmackDown, Here Comes the Pain.
So not Supercard. Here Comes the Pain is still
holds up. I played it recently,
and it's still the one that the counterpart to No Mercy. It's like it's either No Mercy or Here Comes the Pain that usually comes in at first, and
that's what number 1 is No Mercy. So I mean, not a surprise.
And I like to combine both of them into this because both of them have such a hardcore modding community. It's incredible how they've updated No Mercy.
You've shown me lots of them.
Yeah, to be all AEW, like a full AEW game with AEW wrestlers, AEW style moves, stages. Same thing with classic wrestlers. I advise anyone that was a No Mercy fan of any of those games back then to download the ROM and get any of the mods for that. They're complete revamps, and it's incredible the work they put into it, all the different stages and arenas, and it's incredible. And Here Comes the Pain also has a huge modding community and fan base. I should say more than community, as there's mainly only a few creators, but I've only seen it in videos because I'm too cheap to pay for the dude's Patreon to get access to his mod. He does not release it for free, something like $15. But it's a complete revamp and update to Here Comes the Pain, not just with updated like wrestlers, moves, stages and stuff, but even the graphics they've upgraded and really pushed the limits of the emulation and made it look like a more modern game with Here Comes the Pain. So that just shows you, like, those two specifically, how hardcore the modding community is for those. And there still are some for others, like 2K19 too on the PC, or whatever the last PC one had a lot of mod support too.
Yeah,
but that quickly died off. These two definitely withstood time and have been updated by the fans because they are so beloved. And yeah, Mount Rushmore of wrestling video games cannot not include these two.
yeah, absolutely. Who would you put, like, Mount Rushmore of video games? Actually, that's a fucking new one for me to hear. For the, you know, wrestling video games, what would those four be?
Here Comes the Pain would be on there. This is easier because you don't have to rank them this way. But I would put Here Comes the Pain on there. I would put Fire Pro World. If you have to pick one out of the series, I guess it's the most complete. I would also have to put No Mercy or one of the THQ ones.
Yeah,
I did play Revenge more.
interchangeable to me, to be honest.
If we're going with the more complete version, I guess I'll be fair and say No Mercy, even if it's not one of my most best memory or nostalgic games, whatever. I would have to.
I don't like
say
Hulk
that.
Hogan, but he goes on the fucking Mount Rushmore, whether I like it or not. So
Right, exactly. So it's that type of thing. Yeah. Although I actually enjoy No Mercy. And then the last one, I guess I would have to put SmackDown vs. Raw 2006 because of the GM mode. Just like everyone else. For me, as you mentioned at the beginning, I was promoter for a couple of companies, and my love has always been with the booking. And I have to give a shout out to TNM7 as the main culprit for that and other simulators at the time. Yeah. But if anyone cares, TNM7 has been updated by Oliver Kopp. He's someone that I've had some contact with, great guy. And he has re-released TNM7, which really hasn't been worked on since 2004. And it's a text-based strategy booking game, but it's a ton of fun to just book shows and run them and see what happens and evolves. And great game, tnm7.com. But for the last one, I guess I would have to say the number one wrestling game of all time, Backyard Wrestling with ICP, Sabu. You cannot top that. Some of the coolest animations and hardcore weapons, and
this is like when you told me you hated Matt Riddle.
That was true for a time, though.
I know.
The real last one, I guess, I would have to. I might have even wanted to put Virtual Pro Wrestling on that, which I have on my Switch actually right now.
I'm putting WrestleFest. Fuck you.
WrestleFest.
You got to have arcade represented.
It's just not one that, it's the ones with replayability that I love.
I know.
When I could fantasy book with. It's hard to fantasy book when you have less than a dozen people in your game. And when everything ends up wrestling the Road Warriors. That's called indie wrestling. How about you? We finish out. You mentioned No Mercy. Anything different on that Mount Rushmore?
Oh no, I literally, when I put my fourth as WrestleFest, I was being serious for arcade representation, and it would round it out pretty well for me.
Yeah, I think those are like some of the most common ones. Fire Pro doesn't always fit on everyone's because it's not always their style, or it's wasn't as accessible, and I get that. That's fine. Fair enough argument. But I respect that list for having Wrestle Spirit on it. I'm surprised. Like there was several games that were left off that I was surprised by too. I'm glad Raw 1 was not on there. So that was good. How about that? What do you think is your worst? Let's put 2K20 aside, which at its core isn't a terrible game. It's just the bugs and just some of the stupid things. But what would you say is like a wrestling game that you're just like, I would never, I couldn't force you to play it, you know?
Probably any of the WCW games after Revenge.
Oh my God, we didn't even talk about Nitro or Thunder.
No,
So Nitro and Thunder are probably on that list for me as the worst.
Yeah, absolutely.
The most fun to watch the videos of the promos, especially Kevin Nash. Pick me, pick him. I don't care. Whatever. That was so Kevin Nash, and he just did that such a great job. Raven cutting his promos on there. DP being so excited. So those were fun, but in Thunder, it got out of hand with the extra wrestlers they added.
Yeah,
they added maybe a handful of like cruiserweight guys that you could unlock. 24 other people that you unlocked were variations of the staff that created the game and other stupid characters.
I hate that shit.
It was so dumb. It was so terrible. I'm okay.
Fred Durst is
like
the worst.
One guy.
Fred Durst is the worst game ad ever.
They should do an updated one
with how he looks now.
New, an alternate attire.
They could redeem the worst extra character, in my opinion, of all time by making the best.
That would be
with the same guy.
I would play a full story mode through as old or current Fred Durst. I don't want to say old because then that makes us
there
old.
You go.
But of current Fred Durst.
Chris Holler and PD Skillz petitioning for Fred Durst with an updated look in WWE 2K22. Make it happen. I don't know. Make a custom entrance. But
why not do a new Def Jam Vendetta, but with like old rockers? And you could have like Fred Durst, and you could have Jonathan Davis of Korn, and you could have I'll say Lars from Metallica, because he was the one that was always complaining about Napster, so I would like to beat him up in a match. But you could have all these like rock stars in a match.
Not that Lars.
But you could have all of them in a wrestling style game, and I think that'd be a lot of fun.
There you go. But yeah, we'll do there. I mean, it's been an educational talk. Obviously, if you followed us this long in the episode, Chris Holler definitely knows his motherfucking wrestling video games.
I'd even miss Wrestle Spirit 3. Ultimate Muscle is maybe the most obscure one that I didn't play too much on GameCube. I think it was just GameCube now I think about it. But yeah, I just played through the story mode. But yeah, everyone on that 30 list, definitely aware of. Surprised some were on there, surprised some rankings, surprised some weren't on there. But it was fun one to go through.
Just like every top wrestler list, right?
I think it was a more fun one to go through than one that ranks them according to like their rating, and it's always the same ones. And we got a little bit different in there. Yeah. But screw Supercard, though, I'll say.
All right. Well, there's some final words on the rankings of video games. It's been cool to recap some history with you. Obviously, guys, this is the one and only. Oh, fuck this side of the screen. There it is. Chris Holler and myself. You know where to find me at PD Skillz Show. And this Sunday, the 29th, at Taylor Junction in Toronto. No Ring North debut episode. Come hit me up. I'll be doing the usual, smoking up, throwing down, and probably gonna fuck somebody up because you know I hit hard. Till next week. We're running Thursdays now. We're out.